Welcome to the Kindred Journey podcast, the podcast where women share their experiences of stepping into courage when comfort is no longer an option. This is the podcast for connecting in community with women who have been shaped by the liberating to challenging seasons that life endures. I am your host, Leslie. I am a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. I too have experienced these seasons in life, and I want you to know that you are surrounded by a community of courageous, real women here for you. I can't wait to connect, so grab your favorite beverage and join me on this kindred journey. You know, there are those people in your life that when you cross paths with them, you just have this, yes, that makes sense kind of feeling. That's how I felt when I met Chelsea. Being a mama and founder of a business that supports postpartum women, I immediately gravitated to Chelsea and what she is doing for women and helping support them along their postpartum journeys. Chelsea talks about how she cultivated pillars of courage when she left the corporate world twice, and how all of the experiences she has had, professional and personal, has led her to where she is today, and how Core Care Cultivate was born. Join me and soak up all the goodness this conversation has to offer with Chelsea Barbine. Okay. Hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm much better now. I'm
Me
looking
too.
at you.
Me too. I know I wish we were in person sitting on the couch drinking some coffee together, but this will have to do for now.
This will do. This will do.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hi, everybody. I'm here with Chelsea Barbine from the Cultivate with Chelsea podcast. I have had the honor to meet her through one of our classes that we decided to take together, actually on podcasting. And she has been my soul sister through this journey. And I absolutely love her and what she's doing for women postpartum. And I'm so excited for her to do a little bit of an introduction about herself. So Chelsea, would you like to tell us about a little bit about yourself?
Oh my goodness, of course. First of all, thank you for those kind words. I like my heart just like swelled as you were saying that, and the feeling is so mutual. Um, Hi everyone. I am Chelsea Barbine. I am a wife, a mama, a passionate yogi, and the host of the Cultivate with Chelsea podcast. Um, oh my goodness, where to even begin? I I will tell you that starting a podcast was like not on my radar at all.
Same.
Becoming a business owner was not even on my radar. And honestly, in spirit, I'm sure we'll dive into this a little bit more, but leaning into, as cliche as the saying goes, making lemonade out of lemons. I found myself here. I started Core Care Cultivate in summer of 2023, and in sharing with one of my other mama friends, just kind of like my vision for one of the product offerings that I was working on. She had encouraged me to start a podcast. And I was like, get the fuck, could I swear on here? I should have asked you before we started.
You're good.
Like,
you're
okay.
good. I'll make note of that.
I'm like, get the fuck out of here, Anna. Like, what? A podcast? And she's like, Chels, think about it. I can like literally picture this conversation and hear her in my head as I'm telling you this. But she was like, think about it. Like, as a mom, like in motherhood, right? Not necessarily preparing for like expecting your first, but like in motherhood, like how do you consume content? You're not reading a whole workbook. You're not doing all this. And she was like, I really think you need to do a podcast. And I was like, oh my God, you're crazy. Like what? Me on a podcast? Like I can't even stand my own voice. Like what? And she was like, I'm just telling you, the information that you want to share is so necessary. It's so important. It will truly be life-changing, not just for the mom, but her family, her community, really big picture, the freaking world, right? If you think about it, I really think you need to do it with a different method, or at least in conjunction with. And I was like, okay. She was like, if no podcast is on Apple or Spotify in a year, we're going to revisit this conversation. And I remember going home from that like play date, right? Quote unquote play date, telling my husband about it. And he like laughed, and I was like, yeah, haha. But also like, but wait, should I? Like, this could be kind of fun to do. And next thing I knew, I saw on, maybe it was Facebook or Instagram, somewhere I saw that like Kathy was having the boot camp
Mhm.
for podcasting. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like a week after this and again, it wasn't one of those things. It couldn't have been like a traditional ad. It must have been like from her Instagram post or something because it was
Okay.
like very organic. And I was like, that's weird timing, like to see that. And then here we are, fast forward.
How many months later?
I know. And it's kind of crazy to think about. Like that course started in August, right? And it's now been like a few months. And I think back and I'm like, oh my goodness. It's only been such a short period of time that like the growth and everything that has happened since saying yes to that was just like, it truly is mind blowing. But that's like with
Hmm.
anything in life, I feel, looking back on mine.
Absolutely. Well, and then like you said, you weren't planning, it wasn't on your radar, you weren't planning it, but look at what has come of it and how much growth and beauty has come from it. I'm just so excited for you and your journey and moving forward into the new year. I know we're recording this in December and we'll go live sometime in the new year because we're launching January 4th. So that's
So
coming. It'll
excited.
be here before we know it. So excited to share your story and have you on here. Thank you again for being such a wonderful guest. And I would love to let you know that, this is a place to share your story. This is your time to shine. This is your platform. It is honored, respected, and a sacred place for you to share. So please be vulnerable as you're willing to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just would love to I guess we're just going to dive right in. And
Let's do it.
if you want to share a season or a moment with the audience that in your life you have stepped into courage when comfort was no longer an option.
My goodness. I'll be totally honest. When I was like looking over these bullets that you so kindly shared ahead of time, so I could not prepare.
Right.
Um, I had no idea which moment that I would want to share because I will argue that many listeners of your podcast will have experienced multiple of these pivotal moments in their life.
Hmm.
And it really is it's so hard to like pinpoint one as like more important or more valuable than the other. Um, but I will share what I think was the real kickoff to the cascade of events that I have found myself in and really navigating was my decision to leave corporate the first time.
Hmm.
It was in, oh goodness, I'm trying to think back to the years. I'm pretty sure I left the ad agency in 2018, if I remember correctly. Um, and I say that truly was like a moment of courage. I'm like laughing because I'm like, how old was I then? I was like in my early 20s. Like I had nothing to lose, guys. Like we didn't own a home, we didn't have a family. My now husband and I, like, we weren't even engaged. Like we were just like dating and like in the honeymoon phase, like the true honeymoon phase.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Um, and I had his like utmost support to do it. So like I think about it and I'm like, was it really the most courageous moment? But I will say yes, in the sense of it was the first time that I did something opposite than what was expected of me and what I was told that I needed to do / should do based upon not just how I was raised, but like truly societal norms.
Hmm.
I am the oldest. I am a Leo. I am an Enneagram 3. If you know, you know. And I have truly always done, up until this point, I had always done what was expected of me. Like I was the first in my family to go to college, um, graduated, got a job, like I was doing all of these things. And it was so interesting to be in a space where I came to terms with the fact that I was doing things and living my life for other people.
Mm.
And it's not to say that I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I just wasn't feeling very fulfilled. And wellness had really always been a large part of my life. I've shared this story in other areas, but I don't know. I just feel like growing up, I'd always kind of been aware of integrative, approaches to health. And here I was working for an advertising agency supporting pharma, like medical, like hospitals. And, and I wasn't creating the content for those clients, but I was helping to distribute a message that like I wasn't 100% behind. And it really became more clear to me after I became a Pilates instructor. And I was doing that. I like laugh about this because it hadn't become apparent to me since I had another conversation. Where like I really started that whole journey of Pilates and ultimately then found myself becoming a Pilates instructor because I was trying to avoid traffic, right? Like getting into the city and the office and stuff. And like, my friend was like, Chelsea, wait, this all started with traffic? And I'm like, I never really realized that, but yeah, here we are today, Cork Cultivate, because I was avoiding traffic.
I love that.
Really, yeah, right. But like that whole shift for me, was really, I should say, my whole shift into wellness and focusing on wellness and supporting others came from that. Just like being able to do that came from leaving my 9 to 5 at the agency. And it was so fucking scary. Like I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was a huge gamble. I was at the time a group fitness instructor at a very well-established, very fancy, gym. And but that wasn't enough for me to like pay my bills. So then I started working at Lululemon as an educator. And that was like my safety net, right? But like it was far from feeling safe. And I will say, from that, it feels like everything has just happened for me since making that huge shift. I ultimately found my training business. I went from group fitness to becoming comprehensively certified in Pilates. I worked in the Pilates studio. I became a personal trainer. I was able to leave Lulu and like fully do that. And then COVID happened. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh shit.
What am I going to do now? And I literally questioned all of my life decisions. I went through a phase.
Were you married yet at the time?
Oh, we were a COVID wedding.
Okay.
So I went through losing my job, losing the wedding date, losing all of these thoughts, all these plans, right? I'm like, oh my God. And I couldn't help but sit there and like see my fiance at the time, still working from home. And I was like, what did I do to my life? What did I do to my life by like leaving that job? And I was just like, fuck. But ultimately, COVID provided a lot of time for me to like really turn inward and really acknowledge that like serving other people fulfilled me so deeply that that was what I wanted to do. And it didn't necessarily have to be in a gym-like setting. It could really be in other ways if I opened myself up to being creative to do that. And ultimately, COVID provided time for me to go and study to become a health coach with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And ultimately I found myself creating content, and essentially then giving back to the program that really did change my life, from a personal perspective, but then also in turn a professional perspective. And I think it was courage for me to go back into a corporate environment after being out of it. There was a little bit of fear in like, am I giving over a sense of control? Like I now no longer have full autonomy over like my schedule and how my day-to-day goes and things. And it was proven that like I truly was giving over control. And I think that was a huge learning lesson that I took from, I will say, my second experience in corporate. It was like the first time through, I truly left on my own terms, as scary as it was. And then the second time was like not on my terms. And it was almost kind of like a fool me once, like shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing of like, I listened to what other people told me to do. And so I went into that sphere
Mm-hmm.
of a corporate setting, went back to it because I thought that's what was safe. Again, that was what was expected. Maybe I did wrongdoing. And I was ultimately like, no,
What
no,
year? What year
no.
was that?
I went back into corporate in 2021, and then I left corporate in 2023.
Okay.
And
So still
coming out of
COVID-ish
that,
coming.
yeah,
Was there a difference in like the corporate world in 2018 versus post-ish COVID 2021? Like
1000%.
environment wise?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, 1000%. Yeah. Yeah, there was a huge, yeah. Oh my goodness, so many different ways. I think one of the expectations, working in office versus being remote, and then navigating like a return to office policy and
Mhm.
navigating different levels of comfort and requirements to return to the office. And um, I think also too, like even the economy being completely different. Um, and I will say that like all of the experiences that I've had in every personal experience has truly supported and guided me ultimately to where I am today. And I'm forever appreciative. I'm forever grateful. I would not change anything. That's one thing I will proudly claim, that I would not change anything about my life.
Mm.
Um, and I will say it also, if anything, just inspires me so much more to have taken what I feel to be the most latest, and I'm sure not the last, step and leap into courage of starting my own business.
Mm.
Um, which I will say feels like the most uncomfortable of them all. But I can't talk to that without acknowledging everything else that has come before it. Because at the same time, there is this piece of like, I've been here, I've
Right.
experienced something different, and I want to hold space for everything that has ultimately led me to support me in this decision. But, shifting out of corporate and starting a business with a home, with a family, especially with a baby, like, what? Like some people would be like, you've got to be kidding me. Like now's the time, and it's like, yep, now's the time. Because if I don't do it, I truly don't feel like, let's be real, we don't ever have like total control, but like
Mm-hmm.
I will really not ever feel in control. And I think it would be very hard for me to lean into, and so like, how do I want to say this? When I am in something, like I'm like in it. Like when I was working at Lulu, I could sell you some leggings like no other. Truly, because I will take pride in like aligning myself with brands and companies that I wholeheartedly believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think given my experiences, it really felt like the next step for me was to believe in myself and to like really take ownership of, this next phase. And I'm very passionate in supporting perinatal women, whether you are a first time mom, whether you are a third time mom, etc. Like I believe that we are forever postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was more like, understanding of that, the postpartum maternal mental health conditions would significantly decrease.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think that's so beautiful, Chelsea. And thank you for um, just sharing. I have a few things that I took notes on
Yeah.
because I was like, pew, pew. But I totally agree. Somebody, and maybe I'm getting this statistic wrong. Somebody told me it takes your body like 6 to 8 years to heal from one
Mhm.
childbirth, but like you have multiple, like, so how, like the healing process physically, mentally, especially experiencing it one time, almost coming up, the second time, I was not prepared. So I'm so happy
Yeah.
that what you're doing, taking the courage to step forward, to start your own business with a child, with
Yeah.
married, with more risk involved than, like you
Yeah.
said in the beginning. I think that was something that, like you said, it was the least risk that when you left your first corporate job, but also it was the start of building pillars of courage for you. And I think that that is so humbling to recognize, because while it might not have been you starting your own business, but it's those moments, and those moments that you've had to step into courage throughout the past few years that has led you to where you are today. And for you to honor and recognize that, I think it's huge, because some people, like
Thank
you said, you wouldn't
you.
change a thing. So I think
Yeah.
that's awesome, because
Thank you.
some people regret, some people dwell on the past, but it is what it is. You can't go back. You can only move forward and learn from either mistakes or choices or whatever you want to call them. But um, yeah,
Thank you.
I think your future decisions were highly impacted on that first step into courage. And like you said, you were living your life for others and not yourself, and not being in alignment with yourself, working for a big pharma company. I don't know what you did or worked for, but
Yeah. No,
um,
working, I should just make sure this is clear because I don't want anyone coming at me being like,
okay.
you didn't work
Or
for Big
sorry,
Pharma. No, no, no,
insurance.
it's okay. No, 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 you're okay. I was at an advertising agency that worked with clients who were in the healthcare field.
Okay.
So like, yeah, so I worked, hospitals and things like that. But there's one thing I want to just dig into a little bit because you just said
Sure.
this so beautifully. And this whole piece, and this is like, oh my God, I like didn't even realize this until you were saying this. This whole piece about like not living life at the sacrifice. Oh, wait, how do I want to say this? Living for others in a way that sacrificed my own desires, my own wants, my own needs. Like that is at the very core essence of Core Care Cultivate. And like my
Mm.
true belief in preparing for, but equally as important, navigating life after birth. Like postpartum as a word, the Latin origin is life, it's after birth. It's not like you were just saying a minute ago, you've read like 6 to 8 years, or maybe like there are so many different statements out there and beliefs based upon different dimensions of health, right? But I do believe, just as you were saying, like mind, body, spirit, there's this like, we are multidimensional human beings.
Hmm.
And to put a time frame, but more so bluntly, an expectation on women that we are supposed to recover, or this is the kicker, get back to, or to bounce back to who we were before childbirth, it is actually impossible to
Hmm.
do that, because
100%.
the woman that you are today is different from who you were before your son. And
Yes,
then you're going to be a
absolutely.
completely different woman after. And it's just like, hold on a minute. Like there is this, I think, messaging out there. This is like one of my like biggest points of frustration right now, as I'm like, really, I'm like getting a little heated, guys. I
That's
apologize. But
okay.
like, there is this encouragement to endure during the postpartum phase, which I'm coming to realize the more women that I speak to, postpartum is mostly associated with like postpartum depression. Like, again, it's not, it's
Hmm.
truly life after birth. And that's why I say we are forever postpartum. If you have had a child, you are postpartum. There
Hmm.
is no like,
There's no end to that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you. And so this whole belief of like enduring, whether it's sleep, whether it's this disconnect from your partner, um this constant feeling of like being needed, like, you guys, it never goes away. there is a shift in your experiences and what each of those pillars, what I would call like our pillars of wellness, what they look like and how we respond to them, depending upon the stage that we're at in postpartum. But like ultimately, our sleep is different, and we need to learn how to like support our sleep health just as much as like those early weeks as we do when our children go off to college. Because guess what? Then they're out and we have no idea what they're doing, if they're home, who they're hanging out with, are they
Right.
passing, are they like, it's just a different type of like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a different type of like influence, right,
Mhm.
on our overall sleep health.
Right.
I'll like take a step back, like even before they go to college, you know what I mean? It's like all of the other, we never stop worrying about another human being. And they are always there for influencing all of these different areas of our life. And it's like, if we continue to tell women, like, don't worry, the sleep regressions, like they'll end after like 2, or, just don't worry, or like, you know what, you're not going to feel ready to have sex until like 6 to 8 weeks after, but like you'll persevere. No, then it's like a constant change in our hormones. Like,
Yes.
what? And like, if we just like tell ourselves, like, wait until the kids get out of the house before you feel like you need to reconnect with your spouse, like, is the relationship even there at that point? Like, how, like, oh, I just thank you so much, Leslie, for pointing that out, because I never noticed that common thread.
Yeah. No, I resonated with so much that you just shared, and I think it's just a different kind of sleepless night. Just like my first child, going through my first childbearing experience, it's like it just gets different. It's like, oh, I really want to focus in on being present with my next child, because I feel like with my first, it was, oh, when they start crawling, it'll be easier. When they start doing that, but it's like, no, it just gets different. It's not any less hard. It's not any easier. It's just different. So I can only imagine the sleepless nights from breastfeeding in the middle of the night when they're a newborn to
Yeah.
when they're in college. And like you said, who are they with? Where are they going?
Yeah.
It's a different kind of sleepless night. So even just what you just shared, your sleep is never going to be the same after being postpartum,
Yeah.
is something I never even really considered. So I think, like I said, what you're doing for this community of women, I think, and just bringing acknowledgement and awareness to, like you said, not just postpartum depression, because that's what people associate postpartum with. It's a whole experience. And it was game changing. I mean, it was life changing for me, becoming a mom. It's the best,
Yeah.
hardest thing I've ever done. And I don't regret it one bit. But yeah, I think what I've learned over the past few years, or is since I did go back to work, this new role that I have that takes up over 50% of my time, and having to navigate my existing roles that I had. But, I only have 20, everybody only has 24 hours in the day. So to try and fit a full-time job and being a wife and being a mother and caregiver and getting groceries, and just like, how do people do it? Like, that's the constant question I have. I mean, because it's a struggle for me. It's been a real struggle to try and just give myself the grace that I am going to probably half-ass. That's how I feel. I feel like I'm just half-assing all my roles now, is because I have so much, um, so little time. And then to also prioritize myself or make time for myself. How do you even do that when, but you have to, because if you go, then everything goes. So I just think having you as a support in Women's Corner, I think is just such a beautiful thing. And I'm so excited to see. I know I'm gonna need you in a few months. So sign me up. I'm very excited. Yeah, I just think it's wonderful what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I think really just to like pull something out of that is exactly as we both are sharing right now. It truly, it's never ending. It's always going to be in quote unquote something, right? To whatever stage of your postpartum/motherhood you are in. And my hope is through supporting women and like really connecting to like, what are their core needs, right? What are the care habits that are going to be most supportive for them? That they have a set of tools that they can go to during each phase as they need it. Because ultimately, it's not ever going to get quote unquote easier. It's just going to be different and a different type of challenge. And I do believe that, just as you're saying, if we are nurtured, right, then we can then nurture others. So in those moments, what can we do to help bring ourselves back to ourselves, to help bring the sense of balance? So then we can respond versus react throughout each of those phases. And again, I feel like that goes in every piece of it, whether your baby's crawling or they're walking or they're in school. Like I hate to say it, but it's forever, even when they're married and they have a family of their own, as I hear from my mom and my mother-in-law, like it is the same again. But if you have those foundations, I think we're going to better be able to show up not only for ourselves, but our children, our family, our relationship, our communities, and then ultimately then be able to give to the world. And I will boldly state that I believe that the health, I'll get real
Please do.
here
I love
is,
it.
I feel like the health and happiness of the world resides in the mothers. Because if you don't have a healthy and nourished mom, you do not have a healthy and nourished family. And those families are what then create the community. And then you continue to expand and expand and expand. And it's like, what could we solve by just giving back more to the moms after birth? You think about it, like during pregnancy, there's such an emphasis on the mom and the mom and the mom and the mom and the mom, and then once the baby comes here, it's just like the baby, the baby, the baby. And I'm not saying let's take away from the baby. I'm saying let's make sure that we're still giving to mama so then she can give the best version of herself to her child. Because ultimately, by not caring for moms more and not giving them this support and this true understanding of that, like postpartum is not a time to endure. It's a time to like reconnect, rebirth ourselves. Ultimately, we're doing a disservice to our kids.
Absolutely. I think what you just shared is so beautiful, and something that you said is the foundation. I think the beautiful thing that you are doing here for women with your business, core care cultivate. And I think whether you see it this way or not, and I'm going to try and word this beautifully. You talked about foundation. You've talked about being in alignment with yourself or doing things for others between your corporate jobs and starting core care cultivate. And I think the pillars of your business of core care cultivate is so in alignment with yourself. Like you said, who better to work for than myself, because I'm in alignment with myself, or, for the most part, heading that way. I just think, and for you to share that with other mothers, and to help them build the pillars of a foundation for like you said, it starts with the mom. And so anyways, I just think that that's a beautiful correlation from if you wouldn't have taken that first step of courage and knowing it wasn't in alignment with yourself, and just all the things that have led up to this moment, this season of your life, I think is a very beautiful and strong foundational thing that I'm so excited to watch it flourish, because I just think, I'm just so in awe with everything that you've shared, and just seeing how it's been built, over time, and how everything was just kind of, like I said, those pillars of courage that you have laid the foundation with for core care cultivate, I think is very beautiful.
Thank you. I have like I have the biggest smile on my face right now. I'm like, oh.
I was like, core care cultivate. I'm like, that's a tongue twister. I was like, okay, no.
No, I know. And I gotta tell you, I picked out that name years ago when I was going for health coaching, because I initially wanted to support women who were trying to conceive or reconnect their hormones, using nutrition and movement. Because, I came from a very strong like movement background, and I was so passionate in exploring about nutrition and I believe, pairing the two, I would have been like the Alicia, the one who created Flow Living. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
And Melissa Wood Tepperberg. And I was like, my favorite, like kind of like coming together. And obviously the universe had other plans for me, I think, to ultimately get me to the stage in my life where I really had the utmost confidence to do this. But as I said, even with the confidence, it's scary as all hell. And it's actually even interesting to think about this too, of like, I I value the preparation for postpartum just as much, if not more, as a preparation for birth, because like I've experienced it firsthand of the positive effects that it can have when you do that. And like perhaps that was even like a moment of courage in a sense to like want to do or try to experience postpartum differently, because it's so easy to hear, just as we were talking about earlier, it's like part of the woman's healing process, I believe, to share those traumatic experiences, to share those challenges like that. I'm not taking that away from anyone. We talk about it all. It's really hard and it's really rewarding at the same time. It's beautiful and we're in tears, but like there is, I really think that, my hope to always become a mother one day, really started to become like a question the older I got, because then I was surrounded by more people who had children, whether it was a mom or a dad. And it's just like between that and like what Hollywood would display, especially in the birth scenes. Oh dear God, Colin hates those. He like always makes me turn it down or fast forward. Even the Friends episode of Rachel, just like waiting to have Emma. He's like, can we skip this one? I mean, understandably so, but between that and like what I would see on social media, I was like, this looks awful. Like you don't have time for yourself anymore. You don't love your husband. You lose your home to baby gear. I'm like, who would want to keep doing? Oh, and then you have to choose between being a good mom and working. I'm like, no, no, no. Like there has got to be a better way. There's got to be a
Yes.
better way.
There should be. I feel like
Yeah.
um it's until you experience it. You can always, I remember my mom saying, "Oh, well, you can't love the you love the second just as much as you love the first." And I'm like, "But how?" And with us expecting in a few months, it's like I don't know that yet. It's like this third dimension, right? Like you don't understand until you experience. You can't understand it until you experience it. And so, and even before having our first child, it was definitely the anticipation, the build up, like everything that like you said, that has been painted about childbirth and labor and raising a family. But it's the best, hardest thing I've ever done. And that's, I guess, humbling, but at the same time rewarding. And that's the best way I can explain it to anybody who's expecting. It's like, it's just the best. I don't regret it an ounce, but it's hard, but it's the best, hardest thing. So I don't know if that resonates with any of your listeners either, but I'm, like I said, I'm just, the transparency that you're providing to this community, I think is such a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. One other thing that I would love to touch on that you talked about was, I think it was when you were comparing leaving the corporate world twice. One was chosen, one wasn't. Maybe if you can recall, like expressing those moments of courage where you were forced into courage and you stepped into courage, because all courage isn't the same. All choices and the same emotions don't come with a liberating experience of courage and a forced season of courage. So I don't know if you could touch on maybe just the feelings or the emotions that you had the first time, like you said, low risk. I mean, I know they were different seasons in your life, but also different types of courage.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. The first season was very liberating, yes, but scary. More so in I'll admit, fear of what the company was going to say when I told them that I was leaving. I was so young. I had never resigned from a position. Like I had jobs before, I had a job in high school and a job in college, but like I'd never actually like worked and invested myself in a company for over 4 years, and like then decided to leave, and I was doing something completely different. And I remember them when I was sitting with HR, she'd even asked like, is there anything that we can do to help, like change your mind? And I was like, nope, nope. But there was a piece of me on the flip side, again, I was in an established relationship. I was so proud. But I knew what a change I was going through and ultimately our relationship. I felt as if we were either going to grow together or grow apart. And I was so fearful of what that potential was going to be. And, digging in a little bit deeper into like what other people would think, I was like, oh my God, I remember a conversation Colin and I had in the car one day of like, we're going to go to your work. We actually had worked at the same company at first, and then he had left before I left. He went to a different company, and we were preparing to go to like his holiday party. And I'm like, is that going to be weird for you to be like, yeah, this is my girlfriend Chelsea, and she works at Lulu, and and here I am. I'm like 23 years old or 24. No, I guess I was probably 25 years old at that point. But he was like, no, like, why? Like, what do you even, who cares? But I cared, again, it was like what I thought to believe. So there was definitely a blend of emotions with that. It was like
part of your identity, maybe a little bit was wrapped up in what you did versus who you were.
Exactly. 1000%. Whereas the second, shift of moving away from corporate, leaving corporate, I don't know how how to really describe that PC, but there was a huge shot to my ego. I bawled. I was so fearful. I was so caught off guard. Yet I had been manifesting this new opportunity. Like I truly, when I tell you, like I was working with a coach and I would share with her, we were approaching Frankie's first birthday and I was like all in my feels doing her baby book, which like still isn't finished, by the way. And I'm like thinking like, what beautiful first year of motherhood I had and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I would love for more women to experience this. Like the more I'm talking to more moms, the more I'm realizing like how different my experience was. And again, being in the wellness space, like perhaps I lived in some sort of bubble and I just like wasn't aware. After experiencing it, but she was like, sit with that, like you never really, I'm like, no, like, I don't want to, I love my job. I love what I'm doing. I love who I work with. Like, I don't want to take on more work. I want to be more present at home, if anything. And she was like, Chelsea, I'd really journal with that. I'd really like meditate on that, Well, the universe fucking listened because it delivered real quick. They're like, you want to do this, but you need more time. Like, we got you. Here you go. Here's more time. And I was just like, oh, what? Like, it was so scary. And I remember feeling this instinct to like actually react, not to respond. Like I was like immediately looking on jobs, Indeed and like all this stuff and like trying to like figure out like, what am I going to do? And it was actually not only my husband, but my mother-in-law, believe it or not, who encouraged me to take a breather. And she was like, it's summer. No one's hiring right now. Like, take a moment, sit with it, enjoy being home with Frankie, enjoy summer, come down the shore with us. She was like, come, because they, have a place down the shore. And she was just like, come stay with us. You enjoy, you relax, you deserve this. And I was like, wait, what? Like your son's going to be influenced by that. Like, I'm like subconsciously thinking like what this all meant for our family, of course, from like a financial perspective. And it was like really overwhelming. It was so overwhelming. And I think quite honestly, though, like taking the space and taking that time to like truly be present with my daughter and really sit with like, okay, I need to let go of what was, but now this is an opportunity to rebirth what is, what can be. And I think when I was able to come to it with a very like level headspace, but then also allow myself to like dream a little about like the possibilities are truly endless. I could go anywhere from here. And not feel the guilt of like, I chose this, so it better fucking work out, although now I feel very much in that stage because I'm like, all right, this better work out, it was a little liberating in that sense, but
Mhm.
also, as I said, very scary. And there's seasons of waves within. I think that that goes with any act of courage. Just as I shared, I had left corporate, I had been out of it for the first time for like a few years. And when COVID happened, I was like, oh my God, like the roller coaster of emotion of like, oh shit, did I make the right decision? But ultimately, that's with anything in life. And I think when we step out of our comfort zone and we truly honor like ourselves, like our true authentic selves, that is when the greatest reward is truly possible.
Hmm. I
Because there's
love
going to
that.
be risk with either, whether you're
Right.
continuing to just deal with the what is, there's risk in that because things can still suck,
Mhm.
even more so, out of our control, just as much as, it can be if we like lean into the discomfort. And I would just encourage people to really sit with that if they're in this season of like, no matter what you're looking at right now with life, whether it's, your job or motherhood or your relationship or whatever, ultimately of like sitting with, it's going to feel good and bad where I'm at. And it's going to feel good and bad with wherever I like am thinking about being, which is going to outweigh, which good is going to outweigh more.
Right.
And again, like ultimately, if we're living our lives for other people, we risk disappointing them, even
Mhm.
when we're living for them. So if
And how
you,
inauthentic that is. So sorry to interrupt. How inauthentic that is to yourself if you're living for others, because that's truly not a, in alignment with yourself.
exactly. And that then for is at risk of disappointing yourself and potentially them.
Hmm.
So if you're only doing it to please them and you disappointed them, then what was the
Right.
point of the first place? So if you can truly live in alignment for yourself and you know that at least you're going to be happy,
Hmm.
that's at least one person that's going to be happy, which I
Because
believe
you're
ultimately then impacts everything else. But
ripple effect for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
because that you're not in, it's not your role or responsibility to be in charge of other people's happiness or alignment. That's out of your control. So to think that we can manipulate that or control that is unrealistic
Yeah.
anyways. But I mean, I get it. I'm learning to not be so codependent as well. And one thing I've learned on my journey of life and courage and seasons is, you can just kind of what you shared, which good is greater and choose. And you can either be authentically yourself and live in alignment with yourself. And that's going to be hard because there's choices in there that are going to be hard, but you're also going to be closer to your truest self and you're and aligned with your real self. Or
Mhm.
you can live in whether it's a safety net or security or comfort but it's not in alignment with yourself. That's also going to be uncomfortable. So it's just choosing which hard you want to choose because they're both going to be hard. There's going to be good out of both of them as well, but choose your hard, I guess, is what that stems from. So anyways, Chelsea, thank you so much. I appreciate you and what you're doing. Like I said, I don't know how many times I've said that. Um,
You're okay. I appreciate it every time you appreciate me. So it's great.
See, it's a ripple effect.
It
It goes
is.
around. Hindsight 2020, what would you have told your old self before stepping into this season, those moments of courage? Like I feel like there were several pillars of courage that you shared. Knowing what you know now, kind of looking back, do you have anything that kind of comes to mind?
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. And also, I'm like preparing myself to get emotional and sharing this. Ultimately, that by honoring little Chelsea, both her and big Chelsea will be really fucking proud.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, really, and I say little Chelsea because I feel like when we're younger, that is like pure authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's before a lot of the shoulds
Mm-hmm.
come along. And I say that because, and again, in looking at my daughter, I see so much of like my younger self in her. And it's a beautiful mirror, truthfully. And like how much, like what I love in her most is what I feel like I try to reconnect with and act from, if that makes sense. I believe that when we are younger, like really, really young, there's this different caliber, this different level of like confidence innately in us. And as we get older and life just happens, I'm not saying that like, anyone in particular like influenced me or that it's going to happen to everyone, but I believe life and life events in and of itself, it almost like disconnects us from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would tell, honestly, Chelsea, however many months ago, 5 months ago to, a year and a half ago to 6 years ago, it would ultimately be like reconnect with little Chelsea. Like what would that the most confident version of yourself do from here? What would they do with this? I think
And
that's what I would tell myself.
that's beautiful. That's true alignment. I think it's all the things that you shared today and wrapped up in a nutshell. So I think that's so beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. Because I think, like you said, it just is part of life. It's society roles, friends, other influences that influence who we become over time, and insecurities rise. But like you said, seeing children in their most purest form of not having that subconscious or that awareness of what other people think of them. They're just they just are who they are. And that being is and being present. I think that's one thing I've learned from having my first son is they're just in that's all they have is the present moment. They're not thinking about tomorrow or the past, and they just are who they are. And again, I think that's authenticity at its finest and its most raw and vulnerable state.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think if there's anyone listening who is a mom, who is expecting, yeah, I'll just say a parent in general, I invite you to look at your children as an opportunity
Mm,
to, one, like as an example for you to reconnect. Because again, that's just by their design. Like that's
mhm,
who we used to be in a
mm,
sense, right? That is your gateway and even your primary motivation to return to that version of self, or that, I don't want to say version of self, but like to, I don't know if the words are going to come to me right now or if this is really making any sense, but like ultimately we are a huge influence on our children. And by acknowledging right now that like they are pure authenticity, I feel like authenticity, my mom actually just told me this, that authenticity was the word for 2023. Maybe that's why we see it and hear it everywhere. But if we want that for them, the greatest way to encourage that is by being it ourselves. And
Indeed.
it's a challenge to come back to. Again, it's a practice because it didn't just happen overnight. It's happened over years and years and years and years and years
Mhm.
of rewiring. But ultimately, like allow yourself to be led by them and also motivated by them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's it's a circle. It's like they need to be led by example by you, but also like seeing
We
my
can learn.
son, they're leading by example of I want to be a better mom. I want to be a more present mom. Like all the things that they're bringing awareness to me around. So
Mhm.
I think it's just like the ebb and flow, the dynamic effect of mother and children. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Like
thank
think
you.
about it. Like if you ever saw, your son like ignore his own desires
Mhm.
because he thought that he should do something else, like how would that feel? Like,
Heartbreaking.
right. You'd be like, no, 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 no. What do you mean? Like
Yeah,
you can do that. It's fine. And then meanwhile, like here we are potentially not doing that. And it's just kind of like, and I'm not saying that to like, make anyone
right,
feel any type of way. I'm just using it as an example, of
right.
like, I don't know. I think there's so much that we can learn from our children just as much as they can learn from us, in
Absolutely.
navigating life. But um, thank you so much for
Oh,
sharing that and for having this conversation. Thanks so much for having me.
oh
Oh
my
my word.
gosh.
What an
Like
honor.
I could talk to you forever. I feel like it's just like you said, there's just those people you connect with. And I feel like right off the get-go, you were one of those people. And I just respect you and honor you and appreciate you so much. And if you could share with our listeners how they could find you, if they would love to connect with you as well or follow your journey and your podcast as well.
Yeah. So I have a podcast called Cultivate with Chelsea. So you can find me on major platforms for that. It's a combination of reflection, more so about, this current phase that I'm in of motherhood, and also a lot of conversations with guests, whether it's fellow mamas, experts, someone that I just want to talk with. I don't know. I'm really trying to get Colin on to do an episode about our relationship because I think that would be so
Ooh.
juicy. He's a little reluctant though. We'll see. Um, and then I have a website where you can learn more about, coaching opportunities and the community in and of itself, which is corecarecultivate.com. And you can follow me on Instagram, although I'm like not very consistently active. Again, priorities, but that's chelsea.barbine.
Awesome.
Uh,
Well, thank you, Chelsea, so much. And I cannot wait to share this with the listeners. And I can't wait to hear some awesome feedback. So thank you again for sharing your story. And I appreciate you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me and listening to the Kindred Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please consider taking the time to rate and review the podcast and share this episode with family and friends who you think might enjoy it. Your positive feedback helps me reach more courageous women like you. This is my passion project, so without you, I wouldn't be here doing this, and I deeply appreciate your support. Until next time.